here with our Director of Children and Family Ministries, Julie Hawkins, and our Senior Pastor, Reverend Daniel Humbert. And you, as I said, are watching Go Beyond. And this is a time where we dig deeper into the message from Sunday morning. And so what we've started doing on Mondays is going through the huddle discussion together. So if you are watching on Facebook or anywhere else, in the description of this video, you will see a link to our huddle guide so that you can follow along and think about these questions. But the purpose of the huddle discussion is just questions for you to think about. And right now we are in the middle of our parenting series. And so these questions are very much geared towards parents of children. And we found that the answers to these questions and the way that you relate to the message each week is different depending on the age of your kids. And so we'd love to hear your feedback in the comments of maybe how the question hit you differently if you've got a preschooler versus elementary, middle school, high school, a grown kid. So at this time, I'm going to put myself on mute. I'm going to pass it off to Julie and Daniel to lead us in this conversation.
How fortunate for you.
Thanks, Alyssa. So I pulled up the huddle discussion on the app. It's at the bottom of the sermon notes if you're ever wondering where there are. So I'm just going to kind of go through the app and we can talk about the questions. Yesterday you talked about 3 intentional ways to be involved in your kid's life: talk, touch, and time. So the first one, which is kind of a touchy subject to talk about sometimes, is intentional touch. And I know when kids are little, they're all over you. And we've kind of talked about this, and you might be like, step off, I need a break, some personal space here. But when they get older, when they hit that tween phase heading into adolescence, it's harder. They don't want to be near you. And so you talked about the value of touch. So what are ways you can positively be affectionate with your children this week? I'm going to change the language a little bit there.
Yeah, I think that's appropriate. And as you rightfully point out, it really does depend on what stage of your child's life they are in as to what that looks like, right? I mean, as you already point out, in terms of young children, there's no question that they are much more proactive about that, always wanting to be in our laps, always wanting to hang on our necks, always wanting to play with us in a very touchy-feely kind of way. And therefore, usually that's not an issue. As they head into pre-adolescence, I personally found, both with my son many years ago and with my daughter, golly, about 5 to 8 years ago, that, it turned into much less of a hug or even an arm around the edge, but became more like, a very quick sort of back rub or just a pat on the back, or even just ways that just allowed us to just very briefly have a human touch and have a human contact. And sometimes, particularly now, she's 16, for instance, sometimes it's clearly asking permission. Can I have a hug now? Or would you mind if I hugged you? So that there's, permission granted or permission offering, because in that stage, 14 to 18, particularly with girls, I assume, but probably is equally true with boys, we need to offer them the option, and we need to offer them the opportunity to decline, right? Because it doesn't always feel right, or it doesn't always seem like the right time, or things of that nature. But I think ultimately my point was, man, just look for and take opportunity to still have human contact with our adolescents in particular. Because it just does feel weird, right? They're coming into their hormones or their bodies are changing. They feel awkward about that. Parents can often feel awkward about that. And the natural inclination for both is to just go our separate ways. When in fact, what an adolescent often needs more than they are ever willing to own or admit is, I need some human contact. I need some touch. And it obviously needs to be appropriate. It needs to be permission given. And certainly needs to be positive, right? So that's all I meant. Yeah,
and touch, it's really just a way of connecting.
Right.
We want to keep that connection going. So if your child's a hugger, then hug. But if not, a hand on the shoulder on the way out the door. Hey, I hope you have a great day at school today. Or how was your day? Glad you're home.
Right.
Something as simple as that.
Absolutely. I would agree. And it can be minimally invasive, if you will, right? Just a quick touch, just a even sort of a touch on the arm as you talk to them for a brief moment, just literal something. Absolutely.
Right. So you also talked about the way we talk. How will you affirm your child this week?
Yeah. So I owned that this is one of my more difficult dilemmas because I make up it's for two reasons. One is I'm a 1 on the Enneagram, and so I want everything perfect, both for myself with high demand and of others for high demand. And therefore, sometimes I more commonly default to, golly, I wish you could have done that better, or golly, I wish that had been a more, committed connection. So I have to literally stop myself and challenge myself to find the positive things. And of course, they're always there. I just need to default to them rather than the other. And so for me personally, it's very challenging. And so I look to everything from what they are wearing today, to a choice they made during the day, to a decision that they've made, and affirming that and just acknowledging that. And I think it's very incumbent upon us to do that. And the challenge again seems to be with adolescents versus young kids. There are all kinds of fun things that we could acknowledge with young children. My grandson, for instance, just yesterday was coloring and cutting paper at the age of 4. And so just, hey man, you did a great job. That looks great. And it was scribble, but it looked great, right? So you just make certain seemingly simple comments. With adolescents, it's just anything and everything with regard, golly, that was great at school yesterday, or thanks for the way you interacted with your friend yesterday, to thanks for setting the table, or you really did a good job with this. And those all become real important. And that I just quoted a deal that I don't know the accuracy of it, but there's that sort of data that tells us we need to be positive and encouraging 3 times as much as we do any of the other stuff, whatever that other stuff is. And that's where I'm always trying to figure out, okay, have I done it enough? And for me, it's not. I need to work on it more.
Yeah, that's absolutely true. And children, especially adolescents, are going to hear more of the negative, and not only just hear it, that's what they hold on to. And that's what becomes their inner view of themselves. So even if we think we're doing a good job balancing it, we really need to be doing more of the affirming in that age, which I struggle with, honestly. I'm kind of like you. I want things done the way I want them done, and I want them perfect. And I think my kids are going to be like that. But then when I step back and think, yeah, she's 15, 17, this is not going to happen the way I might want it to.
Yeah.
So focusing on ways to build them up instead.
I just encourage folks. I'm still with an adolescent, as I know you are. And I sort of learned this lesson from my older child, that I didn't do it enough. And so I'm more diligent now, but I'm still not there. I'm still not where I need to be. And so I just implore our parents to not make the same mistakes I have and or others have, and work on this, and it really just takes work. It just takes intentionality.
It does. It does. So why do you think these 3 principles in particular are so crucial with parenting?
Yeah, I think they're crucial for all relationships, right? I think all 3 of those, time, touch, and talk, are critical to all relationships, and obviously to varying degrees. But because of that, I think they're just critical to parenting, because they're simple yet difficult, right? They're very straightforward and yet sometimes hard to live into. And number 2, and this is the beauty of them, I think, they're absolutely free. They don't cost us anything, and other than literal time, right? And so I think that's a part of the beauty of them, is that they're absolutely free, and they don't involve anything other than my relationship with my kid and how I can sort of invest in them. And I believe also sort of the goal becomes that time and that touch and that talk helps lead to the independence that we're looking for, that they know that they're cherished, that they recognize that they are loved, that they know that there's a hope, even when stuff goes bad or wrong, right? They still know I love them. And that's one of the phrases I use with my kids is, and I used it just Friday, was, even when the world is, and I used a word I shouldn't have used, but I'll use a phrase, even when the world is crashing down around us, your mom and I still love you. Even when things are not going your way or the way you had wanted them to go, we still love you. And I use that as a way to just reiterate that even though I'm upset with you right now, or even though we've had kind of a yelling match, as unfortunately sometimes happens in our household, I want to end with, even though this is not going well right now, we still love you, so that they hear that they, it can resonate with them.
Right. I kind of say this something similar. I say, I don't like the behavior, or I don't like this situation, but I love you.
Right.
You're my child and I still love you. So that's kind of what I took away this week. I'm going to work on words of affirmation and watching the being critical. What are you going to work on this week?
Yeah, that's me. I reiterate that, because it continues to be my besetting sin, if you will, is that I don't do it enough, and I just need to work on it. And so that's what I'm committing to as well. Absolutely.
Good. Thanks for going through the huddle guide.
We got any thoughts or questions, Alyssa?
Not for me.
No, I just mean online.
But if anyone, no, we haven't had any comments or questions, but of course that y'all can continue to submit your questions. And if you do it after we have already gone off live, I usually tag Daniel or Julie in the questions so that they can answer it in the comments. So hopefully you will join in. And even if you're like me and you don't have kids, if you want to be a part of the conversation, you're welcome to, because we believe strongly that our community, we all have a responsibility towards the upbringing of our kids in faith. And that is something that we promise as a church every single time one of our children is baptized, and vows that we uphold that we will take care of our children. So I encourage you to do that. But thank you so much for joining us today for Go Beyond. We will be back again on Wednesday with some probing questions from Julie to Daniel around his message on Sunday. And so I hope that you'll join us again at 12:30 on Wednesday. And you can catch all previous episodes of Go Beyond at tmumc.org/Go Beyond. We'll see you then.